I really didn't love jumping out of airplanes, but I'm like learning how to love it because that's what my son loves. And so,
Yeah.
the message of persevering and connecting with your kids is something that I do hope readers take away. I hope children take away as they get older. They'll be like, oh, that's right. Those are the words of mom. And we lived it and saw it. And now we want to do that with our kids as well.
Welcome to the award-winning Authors Show, where we guide professionals in crafting a lasting legacy through the art of self-publishing. We help you remove self-doubt from your mind with our proven process to become a published author. We have helped authors all over the world to publish their books since 2002. I'm your host, Lisa Umina, CEO of Halo Publishing International. If you're ready to become an award-winning author, let's get started. Today's episode is a beautiful reminder of where some of the most powerful stories begin, at home. I'm so excited to introduce our guest, Amy Childs, an author who has taken something deeply personal and turned it into a meaningful children's book series that speaks straight to the heart. Her collection, A Mother's Love series, is inspired by her own sons, and you can feel that authenticity on every page. In today's conversation, we're going to talk about what inspired her to turn her experiences as a mother into a book series, how she brought these stories to life, and the impact of her messages. Welcome, Amy. I'm so glad you're here.
Thanks, Lisa. It's great to be here.
Great to have you. Tell us a little bit about the behind the scenes, about you. 'Cause I mean, you're an author, definitely an author now, but there's more to that story.
Yeah, I never thought I would be an author. It was never something I set out to do, but I grew up in the military. I was a military officer myself, and then I was a spouse in the military, and we moved quite a bit, and really I was a mom and ended up with 5 children total and homeschooled and did all the mom stuff. We did have a physical therapy company, so we were dipping our toes into business and raising children. And I decided to get into business coaching towards the end of that raising
Yeah.
kids era. And so I've been coaching business owners and leaders and people that want to be high performing and parenting. And somewhere in there, I decided I also just wanted to say I did it and published a children's book. And really, one of the things that spurred that on was having grandchildren too, and having that
Right.
next generation to be able to tell my stories and think about how am I going to leave my words with my kids and grandkids.
One of the biggest things, and believe me when I say this, you're a mother of five, and that to me is the legacy, especially when you're talking about grandchildren. And so, what the coolest thing that I love is that we can leave as authors this beautiful imprint, right, for future generations and having them read your stories over and over again, long before, after we've left this earth. So, for me, I love that we have that capability to do something pretty amazing. And knowing that this message can be shared now, right, in over 193 countries. So then the other common message that we hear in my podcast is, well, if she can do it, is literally after you just did that intro, I'm like, where did you find time to write this? But here you are. Because you're balancing life, you're balancing a full-time career, 5 children, now grandchildren, and you're still doing it all and you're still enjoying obviously the benefits of doing every single thing on your bucket list and then some. So you talked about just putting it, on there. Yeah, I found one book, but now I was going to ask you when's the third one. But now you have 5 kids and grandkids. You'll be writing for the rest of your life.
Maybe.
So let's talk about this. We've got 2 books out there, right? You've published A Sky Full of Dreams and Never Once. And they're rooted in your experience as a mother, supporting your children through very different journeys, right? Aviation to football fields, right? So, what inspired you to turn these personal moments into 2 distinct book series, and how do their messages differ?
Yeah, well, the first one I wrote was Never Once, the football story with my son, and that was written in my mind as I was caregiving for over a year and trying to get him healthy again after some pretty big football injuries. And
Yeah.
even though it's written in children's format and for a child, what I don't tell in that story is that it was actually the fifth surgery that he had And so, as I just formulated, what are we going to take away from this year? That is how Never Once was born, so to speak. The 10 lessons that I portray in the book talk about what I was trying to reiterate to my son. Like, we are going to get through this, and God is going to walk with us every step because it was a pretty bad injury and there was some pretty sad days for us. But I wanted to give that message to other young kids that have these injuries or setbacks that you're never alone. And
Well, you know what? That touched on something that I remember with that first book that you did share real pictures. I think
mm,
that's the amazing thing that you got to see because this was based on a true story, obviously. And what I love was what your son did was even when he was injured, he didn't just sit on the sidelines. He was a coach. He showed up for the games. And I love that you took these real scenes from photographs and they're implemented through your book and you brought that whole story to life, obviously for children to understand that. And I think the bigger message too sometimes is as painful as this journey was, right? You always showed up. And believe me, and you can say this too as a business owner, we go through there's messages for all ages in her books. But really it's hard sometimes to show up when we don't have the physical injuries of, okay, today I don't feel 100%, but I still gotta have to show up. And I love that he did that. And he was a hero, he's a role model. And I know that's a big takeaway from your football player book. And so I love that I got to share that personal side with you before it all started coming to fruition. And now we're sitting here like, wow, that really was truly based on true story. Because I know I saw the real photos, and that I think that's amazing. And then now when we get into a sky full of dreams, aviation, right? You emphasize encouraging children to dream boldly, and I love this other part. You're bringing in faith and guidance. I know when we start planning, he starts laughing, kind of thing. But how did your own background, right? You mentioned that in the Air Force and your leadership shape the way you guided your son's path?
yeah, and A Sky Full of Dreams is also very personal in that I have actual photographs for every one of the illustrations that
Awesome.
Marta was so great to help portray for me. And it really was, also a story of how I was supported by my family to dream big, change my dreams when I needed to. And then how do I let my son dream big in a different way than what I did a little bit with the jump? He is on the wings of blue, and I did not do that, even though I went to the academy. And I just love that he now gets to encourage other young kids to do whatever they are feeling called to do. And he's about to graduate, so it was great timing for me to get this book published as we celebrate the end of 4 long years, which have also been filled with setbacks and changing paths a bit. But in the end, I think he would say that he made the right decision because he had support in people to back him up. And that's
No,
really my message.
it's your message, even though one's aviation, the other one's about football, because and you highlight too in Never Once about just being there on the sidelines. And I know a lot of listeners will agree, like we know parents are always supporting children on the sidelines because we can hear them. Sometimes they don't use the right words, but we can hear that they really support their children. And so taking that, because your emotional and your spiritual strength are really important. And so to find some of those moments, right? That shape this message. You talk about setbacks. How did this all shape and come together where you could say, wow, when I look back, oh, I see that I was very supportive, but can you give us some of those moments where you're like, you kind of wanted to quit with them sometimes?
Oh yeah, for sure. And that's even a story in the Never Once book was that my son and I made a deal with each other because I wanted to quit and give up all of my stuff with football too and just say, hey, let's be done with injuries and let's not risk anything anymore because there's always risk when you're going to
Yeah.
do big things.
Yeah.
And my son that jumped, I'd rather him just be in a bubble and not be jumping out of airplanes. And so they have inspired me to say, no, mom, we're not going to live without taking some, important risks, calculated risks. But
Exactly.
one of the moments that's just so impactful to me still is when my son was in surgery and he was in a deep, deep sleep, and I was sitting there praying for him, and he woke up and grabbed my hand and said, "Did we win?" And then he fell back
Yeah.
asleep, and he was asleep for like another 6 hours as I was trying to shake him and wake him up. And, I thought, boy, these kids inspire me to not quit and to continue to have that winning mindset and to think forward, because there's a little bit of a metaphor for my life as well, in even raising kids and navigating business, where I've had my own setbacks. And so they have inspired me as much as I've supported them. And that's really also a message to tell. And then
It,
one last thing I'd love to say is I was working with all my business
absolutely.
owners at the time, and I was giving them the same message as I was writing in these books. So
I
it was,
think I feel this with you that a lot of people can have a great presentation, but they don't really live it. And, define motherhood in itself. That's a 24 job and, right? 24/7 and always showing up for them and being there. I can't speak for them, but I can just see who I've worked with in the last few years is that someone who is a role model and not only are you doing that in your family, but you are doing it in your community. And I think a lot of people look up to you and you are a leader. I believe you had mentioned in one of the women's groups or something that you belong to of many groups and organizations. And so with that, it puts another platform on for you because you've got these beautiful messages. But really, what hits home for an author is when you can be in front of your audience and not only say that you've done it, but here's the tools, here's how I get through life. And one of the things, aside from being a really beautiful business leader, is that you have faith. And a lot of times, especially today, obviously in schools, we're not allowed to speak of that so much. We're judged by it, or I really don't know how my life could be without even knowing God. So I don't even know that connection. I think it'd be a fish that doesn't know what it lives to live without water, right? And so for me, I see that intertwined with how you are as a person. I think that's so beautiful to have that uh woven into what you do and live and breathe, and to know that you put these children's books out there and you didn't forget that God's always there by your side, because you did mention that in there. And I think that's a big part of who you are. And so now when we get into talking about you as an executive coach who specializes in emotional intelligence and transformation, how do these the lessons in your books reflect the same principles you teach in your professional work? Show us.
yeah, I mean, they really do, even though they're children's books and they're written mostly in pictures. I use the lessons. It was why I really wanted to work with you, the publisher, to put the lessons in the back of the book, because I give them to my business owners. And I say, let's sit here and talk about what dreams you have today and who's helped you and who are you helping to dream when it comes to your employees. And so they all apply in my professional life and my personal life. And one of the biggest things I do with emotional intelligence is talk to my owners about being real and authentic, because nobody appreciates going into work with fake leaders that are not living the life that they're
Right.
talking about.
Exactly.
And so being authentic, and that's where I had to bring in faith. And I know that a lot of us have different backgrounds and different experiences with religion, even. But at the core, I find most people have faith in something.
Right.
And so very open to talking about it and establishing that as an anchor in their lives.
I know for me and my company, our Monday meetings they begin with prayer, and I feel don't believe in God. And I always say, when it comes to your turn to pray, you know, I have no problem you using that time to say what you're grateful for.
Mhm.
It's just amazing how they are open to it. Because again, if you're not taught it at home, where does it come from, right? And so for me, again, I can easily say, let's pray. And then we leave that Monday morning meeting. Then I have this crazy boss that I work for, right? So I definitely don't want that. But I believe if we start that way the week, that we can lead with that type of integrity, that type of kindness. We're reminded so much today, especially in the world that we live in, is just to be kind and be grateful. And believing in something bigger than us. I hope, that's what we hope for, right, Amy, is that you have something, because when it gets tough, when it is times where we want to quit, at least we have someone just like you. We're praying to God by your son's side in the hospital just to get you through it. And for me, if there's ways that we could teach people how to believe, right, into something so they don't feel so alone. And I think that's amazing as a mom that you've given that to your children as well. So that being said, both books celebrate perseverance, resilience, and connection. What do you hope parents and children take away from reading your stories, and how can these stories spark meaningful conversations within families?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's evolved out of these books is that asking questions and really being curious about what your children are struggling with and what
Yeah.
they want is such a key. And as I've wanted to say, well, this is somewhat of my legacy. Someday I won't be here and they'll be speaking about me in a past tense and they'll say, well, this is what I do remember mom saying.
Yeah.
And this is what I do remember her doing and supporting us, whether it's football. I hate football. I mean, I think it's the stupid sport. I am supportive of it because my son literally has a ball in his hand all the time and just loves it. So I'm like, okay, let's be all in and let's learn football. And I really didn't love jumping out of airplanes but I'm like learning how to love it because that's what my son loves. And so,
Yeah.
the message of persevering and connecting with your kids is something that I do hope readers take away. I hope children take away. As my grandkids now are little, but they look at the pictures and as they get older, they'll be like, "Oh, that's right. Those are the words of mom, and we lived it and saw it, and now we want to do that with our kids as well." And
I
I've
think,
made a lot of mistakes. This is not all perfect
oh, yeah,
books, but
exactly. Exactly. Who hasn't? I mean, that's what
yeah.
makes us work and thrive for perfection. But even so, I hear and I love the message that you have where taking risks. We show up sometimes with like a list of excuses why not to do it, right?
Hmm.
And then if you can go, and I tell people now when they meet me, you can have three reasons why you don't want to do it or you have an excuse not to do it. I said, but you better have 10 why, and I think showing up for life is really important. And I wouldn't be sitting here and you wouldn't be sitting there if you and I didn't take risks. I mean, I left the United States and moved to Mexico. I don't know how crazy that sounds, but it all made sense. And then it was the best thing I did. And I wouldn't be working with someone like you if I didn't take the risk. I think sometimes we need to start when we're putting our dreams together to start seeing what it looks like crossing that finish line. Because I think a lot of people would finish in making their dreams come true. So that being said, what's next?
Yeah, I mean, publishing a book and then trying to market it and get that story out, that's been pretty risky for me. And so I hope to publish another book though, because as I have done this now twice, I learn a little bit more and getting a little bit more comfortable with the idea of being an author, as you say. And so I do have 5 children, so I'm committed to doing one for each of the children. And
Perfect.
connecting on something that they're interested in that's going to be our takeaway together as a mother. And my next 3 are girls. So I
Oh,
would
good.
now focus on mothers and daughters because that's what I have. So,
I love it.
um,
I love it.
but I continue to grow. I continue to read other books. Someday I talk about writing my adults book, potentially.
We
And
talked about an anthology too.
yes,
I'd
and
like to circle back to
learning.
that. I really do, because as a business owner, I also thought it, even as a publisher, we're going to be working on another anthology that I'm going to reach out to that I think it'd be ideal to participate in, but I don't want to give that away in our interview. But That being said, a lot of business owners, when we come together, right, we build this chain of helping one another. And each chapter could be a takeaway for how we get through running a company, the
Mhm.
working with the team, saying the right things, saying it in the right voice. There's like the book could be 600 pages, but I know you had mentioned something like that too. And that coming from you would be amazing. You'd be the key person to putting something together like that. So I love that you're building your series. You always have me. If you need any additional coaching, I'm
Mhm.
here. If you want me to help you to putting some things together for podcast hosts, speaking engagements, that's what I do. And that's what I'm here to help you to do. So we'll help you to get that message out there in the best way you can. That being said, Sky Full of Dreams, Never Once, is available on Amazon, Barnes& Noble, Goodreads, Books A Million, over 193 countries. Just Google Amy Childs, and you're going to find her. You're going to find her all over. And thank you so much, Amy, for being a part of our show today, being a part of my life. And I look forward to putting those next 3 books together for you and your girls.
Oh, thank you. You've helped me to make these dreams come true for sure. So thank you.
Oh, no, it was easy for me when I have someone like you to work with. So I look forward to putting more and more together with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you're ready to publish your book, please submit your manuscript on halopublishing.com, or you can download our free publishing guide to learn everything you need to know about the entire self-publishing process. Start writing your legacy today.